Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, Vandy is back with the Cardify Vanguard deck profile, so I guys enjoyed them. Like, subscribe, and shall we? This time, we're covering what is technically for me the last Lyrical Monasterio deck profile I'm filming, but for you guys it's the second to last, which is Lyrical Monasterio Petratca set 3. It would be more exact set 2, because apparently a lot of these cards are pulled from set 2, and I really thought a lot of them was pulled from set 3, outside of Kyoka, which is the only card that makes this deck a set 3 deck. So, Petra was that one new grade 3 we had that was a promo, which happens to bring back the good old Highlander theme from Bermuda's, except a lot more specific, because before Highlanders only affected normal units. Now it affects everything. So I run everything in this deck that isn't a PG, a trigger, or the grade 3, all at a 2 of. And somehow not only does this deck consistently work with pulling off the Highlander thing, because it's only ever failed once out of like the 20, 30 something times I've done this, but also it has a very high win rate, as in it's only lost 3 games. And one of those games was via deck out, so yeah, let's go. First up, we have our starter in hashtag first step Kyoka. So yeah, this ride line, because we only got the grade 3, I decided, you know what, fuck it, let's go full try hard with this. So any ride line I really desired, so I put in every good ride line card I wanted. The trigger lineup is very diverse, and then we have like a lot of things. So let's go and get started with the first up Kyoshika. So as we know, she's one of my favorite starters in terms of cuteness. Grade, I think, only ever rivaled by Rosa and Michiru. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base. Auto, when she's wrote upon you 1 second, draw a card. Standard star, no special, but none of the ride line requires a specific unit. I made sure of that when I was building this, so you can really make it whatever starter you want. That's why I made it Kyoka, because at the time when I made this deck, she was my favorite starter, again, tied with Felty Rose, and I chose her in the end just because, like, you know, Felty Rose has her own deck, but now if I had no Michiru was going to be a thing, I would have put Michiru as my starter. Either way, Kyoka, you know, like I said, any starter you want because it works with the entire deck, but I just prefer Kyoka because she's cute. Then we have our trigger lineup, a 1 over trigger and fantastic Fur-nale, Catrina. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k base, over trigger, my 1 over trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of your units, plus 10 million for the turn, 100 million for the turn. And if you voted your draw tech, activation factor, which is during this fight, you get during your turn all your rear cards get plus 10. So this is deadly in this deck. Not as deadly, actually, no. Well, yeah, because the main point of the deck is to do a bunch of Vanguard restands, which you'd be surprised how consistently I can pull that off in this deck, and how often I pull it off in a game, all things considered. I think there was a time I literally pulled off all 3 back-to-back, which was very fun. So there's that with Catrina, but then also there's, you know, the whole plus 10 to the rear guards, making them a lot more deadly, and especially if you do end up going for the rear guard standing option, Catrina definitely helps along with that 10k plus, so good over trigger to have. You can really make any over trigger you want, but because, you know, the main grade 3 happens to be a war beast, and she happens to be a tiger, might as well go with the next related thing, which is a cat. Then we have our normal triggers. Okay, I told you, Petratca, to my knowledge, affects everyone, which is why all these triggers are at 1-ofs. So here we go. 1 Glutton Nora. By the way, these are all my favorite triggers, and then the effect triggers thrown in. So 1 Glutton Nora as a crit, 1 original style of Shuka as a crit. I really should have made this the ghost one. I don't know. Oh wait, no, this is the ghost one. I don't know what the other one I'm thinking of is, but I feel like I should have made it that one. And then there's the Precious Tune Edwidge, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k base, auto rear. At the end battle, she was boosted, put it to soul, choose one of your plus 2 for the turn. Actually, this really helps because typically, if you go the more rear guard spammy route, there will be an occasion where you run into soul problems. It's a rare occasion, but you might run into the soul problem issue very quickly, so having that ability to go into soul and give you plus 2s all around pretty nice, so we run 3 crits in total. Then we have our 4 fronts, 1 Glee Singing Totio, 1 Spiritroso Richalde. We all knew I was going to run this if we were all putting all our triggers at 1. 1 Running Start Youth Haida. I don't know, same reason I run Kyoka, I'm just into the track girls, I guess. And then we have our 1 Snow Skip Party, meow. I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep doing that. Grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k base, front ring guard, so your opponent's Vanguard to grade 3 grade, so plus 5k shield, so she's a 20k shield, all around. Really nice for a lot more of the defense, especially because I go on the aggressive the second I get the chance in this deck. AKA, if I go first, I will call all of my hand. If I go second, I'm most likely calling all of my hand. So having the front there to defend me is pretty nice. I'm pretty sure you can guess what effect draw we're running. So yeah, the 1 of fronts, so we have a total of 4 fronts. Then we have our 4 draws, 1 Diligent Follower Sigil, 1 Knowledge of Power Sasuke, because obviously, 1 Thick and Fluffy Siesta Helma, and then 1 Transparent Snowy Night Bear Toy, grade 0 boost 5k shield, 4k base, draw to guard circle if you have a grade 3. If your opponent has a grade 3 grade Vanguard, she gets plus 5k shield, 10k shield. Like I said, all out aggressive. Really nice to have. 1 of. And then we have our 4 heals. One of us is Konami, one Soft Light Purio, who has a funny story behind her, one Liquid Relaxation Margrit, and then one Peaceful Garden Nika. If there was going to be a time where I ran the effect heals, now would it be it, because I was going to run all of them at one of us anyways, but yeah, still don't like the effect heals because they are gimmicky, and especially where this whole deck kind of needs specific names, and I call them. I don't want to have to like rely on the effect heals being up there, but also the story on Purio. So, if you've watched the video between this deck and I think it was Eugene, you can see where I fucked up because I even mentioned it, because I accidentally put her in as a crit. And I didn't know, and I used a crit art because I thought that art was a heal. I wasn't paying attention when I was building the deck. And long story short, when that match came into light against Eugene, I didn't realize that it was a heal, or it wasn't a heal until after I 6 damage checked it, paused for a moment, and I was like, huh. That's not a heal, is it? So, long story short, this deck for a short time had 5 crits in it, or 4 crits in it, and 3 heals. And you know what's funny? That Eugene game was the first match it ever lost. Just saying. So, take that as you wish. 4 heals though. Then we have our normal cards, or our last grade 0, which is our normal order in True Hearted Ruby. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this can take you off to what one of the ride line is. Grade 0, normal order, play it by counterblasting 1, draw 2, choose a card from your hand, discard to put this to soul. I don't know why I always forget the put to soul part. It's literally here to put itself to soul. I don't know why I keep forgetting that. But yeah, the draw 2, really helpful. The counterblast tends to be a problem, but there's a reason why this is here, because we have a counter charger that works specifically with normal orders. So we get that draw 2. The discard's kind of like a 50-50, but hey, it like deck thins, and any form of deck thinning is great, because since everything inside the Persona rides is at a less than 2 of, that essentially means if I draw any duplicates, it's good, even if I don't draw the duplicates I want, because then that just means the chance of Peltra going off more is more likely to happen, which is something I like. So all around, Trade Ruby is a nice order, obviously, because the rest of the deck plays like this. You have to only run as a 2 of, but hey, I still see consistently, I still get those 2 draws. I still deck thin a lot with it, so 2 of. Then we have our 4 Sentinels. Okay, all of them have the same exact effect, but we're just going to go through one of them, and then we're just going to go through the rest of their names. So, Diva of Refreshing Calm Christine, grade 1 boost, 0 shield, 6k base, contains Sentinel, 4 Sentinels in deck, and auto is playing Guard Circle. 2 Dream Units, it cannot ban in battle, and if your hand has 2 or more cards in it, choose a card from hand, discard it. Really great PG, because basically what that means is when this is only one of their cards in your hand, when you place it on Guard Circle, you don't have to discard, which is pretty nice because it means you can be as aggressive as you want to. Me, like I said earlier, the second I get the chance, I go on the all-out aggressive, and now I don't have to worry about it because I have this really good defensive card backing me up, especially when I have like a 50-50 chance of seeing the triggers. Though I do run into Parvy and Bear Toy relatively often. She comes around whenever she feels like it, and then for some reason this is always in my hand. Even though I really want to draft check her, but I don't mind because she's my favorite front here. Sorry Parvy, but we all know why. It's nothing to do with you, it's just that front. So, you know, all these PGs have it, and speaking of all the PGs, we run Christine, we run Unwelcoming and Private Decio, Soapy Splash Ravenia, because she's quite literally in almost all of my decks that don't have a defined theme, so she kind of has to be here, and then same with Musical Committee Nicoline. So I ripped these straight from Angels and Mermaids respectively, and then I ripped these 2 from every deck that I have that is remotely generic in any way, shape, or form. So all these PGs have the same ability. I draw all of them relatively easily. Of course, the ones I happen to have more often decks around tend to show up more than these 2 do, but yeah, it's same amount of PGs as a normal deck. It just looks like different because they're all 1-ofs. But yes, we have our 4 PGs. You see, this is the benefit to Lyrical Monasterio, because they get so much cards every set, and we literally have more PGs and more trigger types than anyone else, to the point where if it wasn't for Bushy restricting the 8 crit thing, we could genuinely just run 16 crit and not have to fucking give 2 shits. So yeah, this PG thing is working wonders for me. Then we have our normal grade ones that aren't 1-of PGs. 2 of After School is always Yulia. Like I said, this deck was full tryhard, so yeah, this deck does what it does best. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto, when she boosts a friend, she gets +5 for the battle. Yeah, a good chunk of the deck is friends, or not a good chunk, I think 4 cards in total, like counting copies, are friends, but I draw them consistently enough, so I don't really need to worry about that. So having a constant 13k booster is amazing, so 2 of. Actually, no, yeah, I'm just not going to say it anymore. Word to the wise now. Everything that's not in the ride deck or the main grade 3 is a 2-of, so I'm just going to go through the cards because there's no point in constantly saying 2-of. So, and I was about to say it again. Munching Girl Sia, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 3k base. Auto when she's placed on rear by Soul Blasting 1 with the top card of your deck, and either call it to an open rear guard circle, put it to hand. If you put it to hand, choose a card from hand, discard it. Okay. She's good in the early game. After we get to the late game, she's kind of bad because she has to place it to an open rearguard circle, and if I add it to hand, I gotta drop one. But in the early game, she does a lot because for some reason, off her skill, I will consistently see a unit I want to call. And there's only one time where it hasn't been that, and it's been a trigger. So Sia's all around really good because most of the time she gets me an attacker, and that one time she got me a trigger, she got me another 15k guard. So all around, and an accidental loop into combos, which is by pure accident because I didn't realize I would have to discard for her skill, and I got full bullshit combos off. Point is, Sia's good. Even though she costs a Soul Blast is not a main issue with this deck, again, unless you go into like really, if you see both of your Soul Blasters early, then you'll run into a Soul Blast problem, but if you just see them throughout the game, you'll be perfectly fine, because all you have to do is ride once and you're good. But yeah, being able to call rearguard's pretty nice, and not to mention the fact that she can kind of get me out of a nuke situation because I can always bounce her back down with my grade 2 of the ride line. That tells you what the grade 2 is more or less. So 2 of Sia, she's just a nice grade 2, and grade 1, and I don't know why I bothered saying 2 of again. Then we have our next grade 1, which is Beware of Overeating, Eileen. The grade 1 I see, I think, the most or the second most. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto rear. When she boosts a rear guard, look at the top card, put it to top or bottom. Okay. I did say before when she was first revealed I would not use her. I know I said this because I remember that I said that about almost every card that you had this ability that wasn't from Keter Sanctuary, made specifically for Hexa Orb. And in this deck, for some reason I use her a lot. Here's why. Deck stacking. Essentially, her skill is anytime I see my top card, if it's not a trigger, I'm moving it to bottom. The reason why is to deck thin. Because, or to be more exact, actually, yeah. So I'll check my drop zone. I'll check everything with her. If I've seen every other copy of a card, then I will send it to bottom because I'm going to drive check it anyways, most likely. But if I haven't seen it yet, or it is a trigger, I'm keeping it at the top because then that means I can deck thin for it. So when I do my drive check after I do it, and I use Petratra's skill for the after she attacked skill, now I have one less copy of that in deck, meaning I'm less likely to see it, even if I send it to bottom anyways. So all around, Eileen's pretty nice. She helps me deck thin, quote unquote, a little bit, and she just all around is a good card. And like I said, I draw her relatively consistently. So 2 of. Yeah, this deck has a weird consistency. I think I've noticed that almost there are 5 units that show up easier than everyone else does, and I can't explain why. Oh, I accidentally skipped over this. I knew I skipped over someone. We have 2 copies of Untitled Iveta, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, one of the only few friends in this deck for her. Friend can use rearguard if you have another unit in the same column as her, they become friends, so that's one way to make this thing friend, was then get 13k boost. And then can use rearguard if you have another friend, she gets +2. So it doesn't matter if it's another friend in the same column or just another friend in general, she just gets another +2, so all around 10k plus 13, that's a 23, all from just grade 1s, plus Persona Ride 33. It's just good. It's just good. Iveta's good. She's one of the units I see consistently. Weirdly enough, it's the grade 1s I see consistently more. I'll see Iveta more likely than not really quickly. Eileen I'll see relatively quickly. Sia, she'll either show up in my opening hand or she will never show up in the game. And then our PGs come far in between. And then we have our last grade 1, which is the grade 1 of the ride line. None in the main deck, unfortunately, even though it would benefit it because it's one of text, but then again, also they are required on playing specific things. So one of in the ride deck of Proof of Hard Work, Willista, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto when she's wrote upon, put a hand card of soul, search after 1 gem card, aka True Hearted Ruby, if I can find it, and you can put it into your hand and then shuffle the deck. All around, pretty good. And then the other ability, not like it matters because you're never going to find a way to soul blast her out and then put her back into deck. But auto rear, when you would play an order, you soul blast one, she gets +5. So you could run her for more numbers because there are 5 orders in this deck, though I wouldn't take my chances considering like True Hearted Ruby is the one I see guaranteedly, and then maybe I see one of the other 4, including the other copy of True Hearted Ruby. So, I wouldn't bank it on Willista working. So getting that hand card and getting that Ruby though definitely helps upset the soul, and it definitely makes my grade 2 turn a lot more aggressive. So one of Willista on the red deck because she does help with consistency on that turn, because that's the turn I really need to be able to do things, because that's the turn I rush people. Then we have our grade 2 order and thoughts into forms. So this order, another order I said I wouldn't run. If you have 6 or more units, play it by soul blasting 2, countercharge 1, by the way. The reason this is here is in the simple reason of I didn't want to run something at 3 of, and I had to run something as a 2 of tech, or a 1 of tech, which happened to be this. In all fairness, it does its work though, because on the rare occasions I have counterblast problems, this comes down when I need it to and fixes it. The downside is I go down to soul problems, and depending on what my current plan is and what's left in deck, that might be a bigger issue than the counterblast, but For now, Thoughts into Forms have seemed to prove relatively useful, except for that one time where the only good unit worth calling was a card that required a Soul Blast, and I had no Soul Blast because this dropped me by 2 Soul. So, Thoughts into Forms, just a good order. It just gets me a counter charge, and sometimes that's what I need to win. So, one of. Then we have our last 2 order in Sweet X Sweet, grade 2 normal order, by counterblasting 1. Look at top 5, choose to 1 unit card from them, call it to rear and shuffle your deck. Okay, this is good. This is good. It gets me a rear guard, and this is helpful because in the situations where I'm not using Ruby right out the gate, even though that is very rare, but in the occasions where I'm not using Ruby right out the gate, Sweet X Sweet comes into handy because I can use it to get another rear guard and go on the attack, and when I'm on grade 3 turn, if my rear guards were nuked, Sweet X Sweet comes in and gets me rear guards. All around, it's a good card. It gets me rear guards, and that's all I really need to do. It can repopulate my board, which is something that happened once through a funny occasion of called spamming Sia. Yes, there was a time, not in this deck, but in a different deck, where I got Sweet X Sweet out, played Sia from the top 5, used Sia, got another Sia, and then used her skill, and then got something else that called rear guards, and then used her skill to call more rear. Basically, bullshit happened, and I can't explain why or how, but Sweet X Sweet was a part of it, so 2 of it. Then we have 2 copies of Opposing Kindness Virginia, grade 2 5k shield, 10k base, auto rear. At the end of battle, she attacked with boosted. If you played in order this turn, put it to soul counter charge 1. You would not believe how both often and not often that goes off. There are games where this will never go off because I never draw her when I have True Hearted Ruby. And then there are the games where it does go off because I just draw these 2 consistently. Either way, she's good. She gets me soul, gives me that counter charge. Works with the deck's purpose of maybe wanting to play an order every turn, so 2 of Virginia. She's just good, and if I can draw into her when I play an order, she does everything I need her to. Otherwise, she's just kind of bad. Also because she gets me soul, which fixes this problem if I ever run into it, because, you know, the soul blast into counter blast into the soul blast problem is very weird. Speaking of which, here's one of our counter blasters that may or may not be a part of that problem. Slight Slump Appel. I question greatly that. I hate seeing that in the dub name, like the comma and then like the question mark, or question mark then comma. So grade 2 and stuff I can shield is 8k base. Auto when she's placed on rear by counter blasting 1, she gets plus 10. 18k. 18k swinger is not that bad, especially when you call it by Peltra's ability. She's a 28. Like, that's always something to consider. Anything in this deck technically gets a plus 10, because if you call it by Peltra's ability, they're a plus 10 on it. So having an 18/28 isn't that bad. The counterblast definitely is an issue, which is why I like her so much, and why, if I could put her at a 4 of consistently, I would. Except the funny thing is, the one time I failed Peltra's ability, it's because 2 of these were in the top of the 10. Or top 7, or however many I checked from her. So, I mean, it was going to fail anyways, because I saw a second unit anyways, but this was the first one I saw 2 of. And now I'm starting to think that what in my opinion was like the best card in this deck, is it cursed? It just happened to be that time because I was praising it so much that game, and I was like, I really wish I could see it. What does it do? It gives me both of them in the same check. So, you know, 2 of her, she's good. Or this one, because 10k is good, and then I would run 4 of her, but now because the deck kind of told me I shouldn't do that, I'm not going to. Now we have the other thing that causes my soul problem, Sweet Tone Kremlhild. Grade, I definitely said that wrong. Grade 275k shield, 8k base, auto when she's placed on rear during battle phase, soul blast 1 gets plus 10 for the turn. Okay, we can very much see why she's here. 18k, if I'm not spanning soul blast for this thing, she tends to be a 28k thanks to her skill and Peltra's skill, and if you plus a persona right on top of it, she's at 38. That happened one game. That was an instant win, just saying, because having a 38k without triggers, boosters, or anything else applied to it, pretty great. 2 of. Obviously. Why not? Then we have 2 copies of literally my favorite card of this deck until I realized I was using it completely wrong. Best Rival Train. Grade 2 and stuff, 5k shield, 9k base, continues back row rear guard, any back row rear guard, so thankfully it's not the stupid back row center shit we've been getting. This unit gets boosted minus 2k. For the longest time I thought it was plus 2k, and no one corrected me for some reason. You see, this is why I question if people watch my videos or sometimes or not, because no one says anything, and then I get skills wrong, and then people call me out on my deck profiles for getting the skills wrong. My response to you is, I'm sorry, no one corrected me about it when they should have. So, all around, Train isn't that bad. She still is pretty good because she's one of the ones that flocks my hand. She's definitely one of the ones that flocks my hand, and being able to call rear guards and get pluses out of it is all around pretty nice. Even if she's only a 7k booster, half the time a lot of grade 2s flock my hand, so I'm okay with Train being in my hand, because I'd rather have her than someone else that doesn't get boost or power, so 2 of. Then we have 2 copies of Hoppin' Stellar Melty. Yes, the only other friend in this deck, and yet somehow I either see this consistently or I see this this consistently to proc off of Ulea, who I see less than either of them combined somehow. Anyways, Melty, as per usual, friend, continues rear guard. If you have a unit same column master, she becomes a friend, and with that unit, and then auto, when this unit is placed on rear during your main phase, counterboss 1, choose equal to 1 card greater less than or equal to your vanguard from your hand, call to rear. If you call a card, draw a card, and you can just call herself and then loop that skill. Great on grade 2 turn, because doesn't require either of us to be at grade 3, so I can just go ride into my grade 2, we're about to get into a second, use my grade 1, get the True Hearted Ruby, play True Hearted Ruby if I have 2 counterboss, draw my 2 cards, call Melty, use Melty skill, call someone else, get a draw. If I have another Melty in hand and I happen to have another counterboss, which was an occasion at some point, use that Melty skill, counterboss, draw a call, or call a draw, and then just call 2 more rear guards, boom, I didn't really lose much hand cards, and then I just got a board out of it. So, honestly, Melty's great in this deck. She definitely gets me rear guards. I mean, there was no doubt before of why Melty was good in my mind, but like if for some reason there was any doubt, it definitely got cleared away by the sense that it's a generic call when I can grade 2 rush my opponent. So 2 of Melty. I just don't like using her outside of friends, but like I said, this is the try-hard build, so I just said fuck my conscience and then just started building this chaotic deck, which somehow stupidly works. So 2 of Melty. Then we have our last grade 2, and that's the 1 of Ride deck and Acestus Kiora. Grade 2, intercept 5k shield, 10k base, auto van when she attacks, can choose a rear guard and may bounce it to hand. Okay, that's really helpful because there are occasions where I just need to call triggers to make units hit, and then there's those times where I spam Sia right out the gate and she doesn't pan out, so either I bounce the trigger I had to call from Sia, or I just bounce Sia to get my rear guards back for later, or there's that one time I bounce Melty and then continue to combo on the following turn. All around, Kyora's pretty nice because as I see it, she's essentially, I can be as aggressive I want on my grade 2 turn, and I can just bounce on my rear guards to hand, and now even if my whole board gets nuked, the most important one's back in my hand, and now I can redo it. There was a time I had to call a PG to make an attack hit. I don't regret that decision, because they didn't see a trigger and I got the PG back anyway, so fuck yeah. And then the ability that will never go out because there's no way in hell to Soul Blast her and put her back to deck, and that's continuous rear guard during the battle she boosted, or during the battle she was boosted, she gets +5. So if you combo her with Tran, technically she's a 17/22, but yeah, that's never gonna happen, because like I said, you can't Soul Blast her out and then put her back to deck, because even if you could Soul Blast her out, you can't put her back to deck because you just go back to Ride deck, meaning you can't get her anymore. So 1 of Kiora in the Ride deck, she works. She gets that early game multi-attack, and she's one of the only generic ones I could find, so yeah. And then we have our last card in the deck, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the Ride deck, the only card in this deck that's actually out of 3 of, and that is Relation Weaver Petra. Petratca. That is very wrong, but whatever. Grade 3, 200 Persona, 13k base. I love the fact that she's like, not a Hisuian, what's it called? Like, Siberian white tiger, or like I just like the fact that she's meant to represent a white tiger, because I'm pretty sure by this pattern of hair she's supposed to be a white tiger. Anyways, 1 ability, sadly. I really wish she had a second ability like sack the top deck, but it's fine the way it is. Auto van, at the end of the battle she attacked the vanguard by counterblasting 1, reveal the top 7 cards of your deck, and if all cards other than herself have different card names, choose up to 1 card from 1 of them, call it to rear guard, and it gets +10 for the turn. If you chose a copy of her, write it as stand instead of calling it, and then lose the drive for the turn and shuffle your deck. Riding it will also give the +10. So, 2 things to note from this, or 3 things. First up, you can still see all 3 of this from her skill, and it will still go off as long as you don't see another set of duplicates. Second off, you either get an extra attack regardless of what you do, and the unit will get +10 regardless, and you get to ride this thing, even though it nullifies Persona rides because it was ride by an effect. But the most important part about this is she's not a once per turn, or not a name once per turn. Meaning that if you manage to do it, which I know I did once, you can pull off 3 of them back to back and ride them. The only reason I didn't do it the 4th time, I mean, I did ride a total of all 4 of them that game. The only reason I didn't do it the 4th time is because that was the last copy in deck and I knew it, and I didn't want to waste my Persona ride. So instead what I did is I called another rear guard and got an extra like 10 out of it because it was this thing that I called and definitely had the soul for it at that point. So she just gets good. She's good. She gets that Vanguard multi-attack. She gets +10s to whatever gets called. She literally doesn't count herself towards her skills, so that makes it even easier to pull it off. And not to mention the fact that she just is a good plus, and she's not a once per turn, meaning you can spam it as much as you want to, as long as you can. If you ever get a card that just says Soul Blast a card when your Vanguard attacks, and then put a grade 3 from your drop zone back to deck, we all know it's going to be support for this, and we all know that thing's going to just be Granted, a 2 of again, but based off of history with this deck, I see it consistently. Honestly, the only ones it's easier to name the cards that don't show up consistently. This is like a 50-50. This because it's the only one of, and this. Yeah, it's weird. Like, only 3 cards actually don't show up. Everyone else, including the triggers, by the way, show up relatively often. So, yeah. And that's it for the deck. So I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, Peltra is really good. Getting that multi-attack, getting the extra power, getting the Vanguard restand. All around, it's super fun. I love this deck. It's super consistent. I got to go all out for once with deck building, and it works like a charm. It's only lost 3 matches. Super consistent. The ability goes off almost always. Literally, it only ever failed once. So what's not to love about it? So I'm going to end it here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord, follow Twitch. I'll see you all in this one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.